Hey everyone, welcome back to High Tea Hoops.
High Tea Hoops.
Thank you, Skylar. It was a little delayed. We missed the mark a little bit. That's all right. I'm Brian Boucher at the Duke of Hoops, and I am joined by Skylar. What's up, Duchess?
Hello, I'm back here on the pod again to learn with the audience again.
I know.
Just like with esports last week.
I'm a huge TikTok guy. You are. You made your first couple videos on TikTok. I've been impressed. Any thoughts there? No? Okay, we'll go into it. Yeah, you're welcome. Today, we are so excited to bring on Jamie Furness, who, you know, Jamie, I'm going to call you a British basketball TikTok influencer. You are an influencer. You have a very popular TikTok account.
Not many of us, so.
And welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to go into this a little bit. British basketball, TikTok, a bunch of my loves all coming together. So if we just want to kick off, do you just want to give a little bit of a background on yourself and kind of what you do?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Jamie. I'm 22, and I study history mainly. That's my first kind of passion, what I want to go forward with. But of course, my main love, my recreation is basketball. And you know, if you're aware of who I am and what I've done, then you know that I kind of put the two together. And recently, I've started looking at factors that build into why and how British basketball has developed the way it is. And yeah, that's kind of what I do. That's my niche.
Yeah, love it. And you're a niche guy. I'm a niche guy. Skylar makes fun of me all the time for that, but that's all
I'm
right.
a niche girl. I'm with you, Jamie.
Niche
is just, it's wrong.
I know it's wrong. I can't help it though. I always say niche. But before we get into the history and the TikTok, you know, we've talked a lot about players growing up in the UK playing basketball. So do you just want to go through kind of how you got into playing basketball in the first place in the UK?
Yeah. So it's a really weird one. I mean, I've always had a vested interest because my uncle's my absolute idol and he's always loved basketball. Mm-hmm. So I've always had a vested interest. But as a kid growing up in England, as you can imagine, I grew up playing football. And it wasn't until about 17 or 18, I used to clean my school's sports hall. And well, they used to give me 2 hours to do it and I could get it done in much less than that. And I thought, well, I'll start throwing a ball around. And I went home and I thought, well, I wonder who the tallest player ever was and how good they were in 2K. So I watched, I believe it was Troy then. He did a video on Bol Bol. Mm-hmm. And then I thought, okay, what about shortest? So I watched the Muggsy Bogues video. Yeah. And then from that, it's been absolutely downhill. I was, all throughout my life and basketball career, I've been blessed with opportunity. And I started working as a teaching assistant at that school. And I was blessed to be able to coach and learn alongside one of my teachers. And then went to Anglia Ruskin University, and I've been blessed with opportunity from my coaches in the institution. So yeah, I mean, it's been a short introduction and short career into basketball so far, but of course, I've loved every second of it.
So 17, it's so late.
It
still shocks me. So what were some of the barriers that you had, or what was your exposure before 17 to basketball? Was it always just kind of in the distance as a sport just out there that you're not interested in?
I think this is what a lot of people and a lot of young people encounter, is that basketball is a sport that you play in PE, and it's a sport that, you know, you go down to a football goal and there's a basketball hoop above it on the metal ones. Yep. And I think that's a lot of people's, you know, kind of introduction to basketball. It's always, oh, well, we can't play football. What other games are there to play? Well, let's go down to the park and see what it is. And, you know, in my city, there's a couple of basketball hoops. And I think before 17, kind of my interactions with basketball outside of the London Olympics were very much, oh, well, you know, I've got PE today and we're doing basketball.
Yeah. Well, it shocks me because it's playing football out on a pitch, out in the rain and the cold. It sounds awful. Basketball's warm.
It is. Yeah. But I think therein lies a lot of the issue is, of course, I could go down to any park in the country, bring any ball, 2 jumpers, and there you go. Yep. You've got a game. But whereas with basketball, it's such a specific requirements. I mean, yes, you can play on grass with an 8-foot basket and a rim that's square, but of course that's not the point. Basketball is such a fine motor skill game. Not saying that football isn't, but of course it's a game of such fine margins. To start playing with different apparatus kind of undermines the way that we practice.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. And just for the audience to just kind of solidify your ground on the podcast, what's your BBL team?
So it's London.
Yes,
London. Living in Essex and Chelmsford. I'm about half an hour on the train away, and what better arena in the country is there than the Copper Box? Yeah, I've had the privilege to play there once, and yeah, it was such an experience. Yeah,
that's really cool.
It was amazing.
What have you thought of their season so far?
Slow, but of course, I think with the amount of talent that they've brought in and some of the personalities, of course, DeAndre Liggins and Kevin Ware have played at really high levels in the United States. Of course, I think coming over to America, and I think a lot of this is the attitude. They think possibly that it's a completely different game, and maybe they try to play a very specific way. Let's put 5 great players on the court and see what happens. But of course, we see it throughout sporting history. We saw it with Leicester in the Premier League, 2011 Mavericks.
Yep.
It's not always just a case of it's a case of fit, and that's why you see people like, I don't know, Newcastle always doing so well, because they had Fab Flournoy playing for them for 20 years, and stuff like that. But no, London's my BBL team.
Are you that active? Before we get into TikTok, you're that active on Twitter? Have you seen the Kevin Ware, Tom Bonnet beef?
I have, I have seen Kevin Ware. I also saw Kevin Ware say that he's going to retire at the end of this year.
He said that on Twitter?
A few weeks ago, and I don't know if it's him just tweeting and doing that, but he said something like, this is definitely my last year playing ball.
That man is just so bored in lockdown. He is just trolling. I
swear. Yeah.
I want to see more Kevin Ware. Yeah, that might be a pandemic frustration tweet. Like, this is the last COVID test I'm going to go through. Kevin, if you're listening, which we know you are, right? Because
we know you tune in every week.
Keep playing. We love playing you.
Yeah. Jamie, I'd love to hear more about what made you want to actually study sports history. Because I took a sports history class in uni, and I was amazed by how much, I think I went into it excited, but I definitely didn't really understand the can of worms I was opening, and how deep you can go in sports history and sports politics and stuff. So what made you originally want to study sports history?
Well, can of worms is entirely the right phrase. Of course, I think the answer for me has 3 parts. So first of all, history. And I chose history because I think a lot of people perceive history as the art of recalling dates and listing battles and listing kings. But of course, it's not that. History is the history of the people, the things that people like, us 3 decide to do. It's looking at culture, it's looking at music. And So history for me is also the art of debating and the art of arguing, and that's so beautiful. Is to be able to create 1,000 words, really detailing why you're passionate about something, why you believe X instead of Y, and it's history for me isn't just this battle happened in that day. So secondly, I guess why sports history? Well, sport is my passion. Any sport I'll get behind. History is my passion. Makes sense to put the 2 together, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And thirdly, I think there's a lot of stigma behind history. As I say, there's a stigma behind what a historian does, what they say, what they look like. And everyone I talk to assumes that I do a sports science, and that's understandable. I'm always in gym, always talk about basketball. And whenever I talk about what I'm going to do my dissertation on, what fascinates me even within history, the bigger topic of history, it's not really what is seen as typical. Whenever I talk to people and they go, I love history, I love learning about the wars, and brilliant, fantastic, that's such a important and vital topic to learn about. But of course, there's so much more to history. And I think sports history really epitomizes that, because no one really understands it. The amount of times I've been asked, well, what is sports history? Is it not just, in 1979 X and Y won that? But of course it's not. It's a reflection of society, it's a reflection of culture, a reflection of politics. It's so many different things, and they're all so important. So for me, that's why I chose sports history, because it kind of epitomizes everything I love about my craft and my 2 passions.
Yeah, it's interesting, the way we see political and economic and all of these different events happening through sports, say all of the teams boycotting a game because of the racial injustice in the US.
Yes.
It's that has been happening for the history of sports. And so to really dig into how everything has, how even just the game of basketball has been shaped by politics for 100 years it's really crazy to get into. 100%. I'm honestly so jealous that you're just spending so much time studying this. Just had to get all that out.
Yeah, it's as I say, I'm grateful and I'm blessed for the opportunities that I have. But you're entirely right. I listen to a lot of Bill Simmons, and he spoke about his time with Bill Russell, and of course, Bill Russell, despite being the face of Boston basketball for a long time, he suffered such racial injustices whilst living in Boston. And as you say, it's not just the big events like that. If you went to go and watch England play football before the game, 95% of the crowd stand up and they sing a song about the Queen and about God. Now, of course, that's a British tradition, and that's fantastic. But of course, that tells you a lot about the state that Britain is. How we view religion, how we view the monarchy, and that's before the game's even begun. There's so much implicit information in the way that we operate within sports.
It's a fascinating topic. And what made you actually choose British basketball as your focus?
Well, I mean, again, it's my passions, but at first it was a bit of a dream, because of course I thought there's no academia on this. I can't name any books off the top of my head. I can't name any articles really.
It's hard for us to research it too. It's a hard topic. It's almost like Sam Nita from Hoops Fix is like where I learn everything from his interviews with different people in the British basketball community.
Well, there's some fantastic books I can recommend you on the topic. But so I went to my lecturers and my tutors. I said, look, this is what I want to do. What do you think? And first of all, they said, well, fantastic. That's niche or niche enough for you. That's perfect. Niche, that's what we're looking for. Yeah, lovely. Niche. And I feel like there's a podcast in that just describing niche or niche. But so I went to them. I said, what can I do? And they said, okay, well, let's not focus on direct academia. Let's have a look at stuff that influences the growth of British basketball. So let's look at inner city culture. Let's look at what people do in the cities, the way that sport develops community. So Darcy Frey wrote The Last Shot, which follows Lincoln High School and Stephon Marbury as they were coming up. And it's a very fly on the wall document, book. And I don't know if you're familiar with it, but the crux of it is that many people in Section 8 and Coney Island see basketball as a form of social mobility. This is their way out of this situation. This is the way to get out the city, to get a degree. Even if they sit on the bench for 4 years, they've got a degree at the end of it. And that's the way forward. Whereas in Britain, I've discovered that it's more music typically, or football.
Well, in your TikTok, where you described this, you mentioned Detroit, where Skylar's from, the Flint area, Detroit area.
There you go.
Skylar, does this resonate with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think growing up, sports was the biggest ticket out of that area I think especially for men of color and women of color. But yeah, 100%. It doesn't seem like that's even really a consideration when it comes to basketball in the UK. No. And I'm not sure yet whether that's a thing with sport in the UK or basketball in the UK more generally. I think it would be sport, because the university path is in my understanding a bit more common here than in the United States. I think a lot more young people decide to go to university or feel like they should, and I think that's a big part of it. But with regards to why British basketball for the dissertation, I started looking at this wider academia. I started noting how sport helps develop community. In the Netherlands, they don't really play basketball; they play korfball, which is a very specific. What? I've seen it. Yeah,
what is it?
I don't want to do it. Korfball, Korfball. I don't want to be I don't want to do a disservice to the sport by describing it wrong, but I think it's like basketball on grass with 4 baskets and specific rules. It's and then you have.
I need to play this.
I know.
It sounds like the end of a Spurs practice, Skylar, or Spurs training when they're on the grass playing basketball.
Seen those, I've seen those ones. And in Ireland, they play Gaelic football, and these are all really specific things. So I could start thinking about, okay, well, maybe the reason that it hasn't grown in England is because it's seen as American. Maybe it's just an entirely American thing. And so I started looking at some of the wider academia, and again, I've been blessed to be surrounded with people that know a lot about the game, that are involved with the game at different levels. You're involved with the game at certain levels. I know players, I know coaches, and everyone has a a different perspective on it, and it's been able to create a really rich bank of information for me to build off of.
Yeah. And before we launch into TikTok stuff, Skylar, because Skylar has some great TikTok questions for you. On that point, like I think the lack of, like you're saying, the lack of role models, you know, there's Luol Deng, who's an all-star in the NBA from the UK. We have OG Anunoby, and even though he was only in London for a year, he still represents the UK. Where Skylar, you know, there is Kyle Kuzma is from Skylar's neighborhood. Like there's a direct, it's like, oh, Kyle Kuzma's in the league. He's a champion.
And that's like one of 6 in the league right now. That's from my area.
Yeah.
So it's just, oh, that is a path that I can take, because a lot of people in this area do it. Where in the UK, they're still, just like Yao Ming coming over from China, just like, you know, with Serbia, with Jokic, there's these role models in these other countries that the UK doesn't quite have yet. And, you know, are there any players that kind of catch your eye where you're like, okay, I think they can make the league, like the Cam Hildreth type, anyone that you're really excited about?
I think Cam at the moment, I think he's you know, he's the name on everyone's lips. I think Cavell Bigby-Williams keeps moving in the right circles. Of course, he was with the Pelicans last year. He was on G League circuits. I think they're the big two. They're the big two because, of course, you know, Cavell's there. Then you have like people coming up through the Ipswich Academy is always providing great talent. You have Esther Little coming up through Ipswich, and I mean she's going to Gonzaga next year. I think she has a real chance of making the league. And yeah, I think that there's a lot of players that they just need the right sort of opportunity to fall at their feet, don't they? They need the right game to be on TV. You know, Furness at Barking Abbey, I believe. I could be wrong. Matt Marsh, 7 foot tall. They all just need an opportunity.
Yeah. And what made you start kind of using your TikTok as a way to talk about British basketball? Were you on TikTok before this? Did you start the TikTok just for this reason? What made you choose TikTok as your main platform? Run us through how this kind of got started.
Yeah, well, it's again, it was a bit of a mistake. It was an accident. Started using TikTok last October when everyone just got into it. Made the odd video here and there. Then I thought, well, I know basketball. I know how to play basketball. I made a couple of like more comedy-based basketball ones. Then I made Problems UK Basketball Players Face. Yep. And
that's the viral one. That's the one
that was the first one. Yeah. And then everything just kind of, the ball started going downhill. People started asking me questions. I thought, well, I know the answer to that question. I like helping. It's a form of coaching. And people kept asking me questions, and it kept getting more and more popular, and I started getting more questions. And then, you know, now it's the 5th of January, and here we are talking about it. That's how it happened, really.
Yeah, it was really fun. Yeah, you found your niche.
Yeah,
yeah. It was really funny, Skylar. The first ones I listened to I think it was, you know, peak pandemic lockdown, where you're walking, or you're like Problems UK Ballers Face, and you're like, don't worry, I'm on my one designated walk government mandated walk
in the yellow hoodie.
Don't get mad at
yellow
me
hoodie with the hood up.
Exactly. And so when you're kind of producing these TikToks, I think the reply feature in TikTok is really powerful, because you're right. You post the Problems UK Hoopers Face, and then the comment section fills with people who maybe haven't been able to connect with that basketball community in the UK and see that as an opportunity to ask questions, to empathize. And you basically, in TikTok, if you haven't used it yet, you can grab that comment, and then you can have it as kind of a reply where you can do a video. And you've engaged, and that's basically your TikToks. Like a big portion of your TikTok is just responding and answering questions, just like you're saying, which I love that part of the engaging the community on it.
Now, I do have a confession on that one, is because recently there's very specific questions that I want to answer. So I asked some of my friends to comment specific things.
Yes, no shame in that. I make Skylar do that all the time.
No, of course.
He makes me do it constantly.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. But I think they're important questions that need to be answered, and they're the questions that I can answer. I don't feel comfortable. I get a lot of comments saying, "I'm 14, this height, this weight, played at this level. How do I make the league?" I don't feel. I'm not. Well, I'm a level 1 coach, but I'm not an experienced basketball coach. I don't feel comfortable saying, "Well, I've never seen you play, but you need to work on your handle."
Yeah.
Stuff like that. But I know what I can answer, and I like doing it. So
yeah, we get those questions sometimes. It's like, first of all, you're not making the league. No one makes the league. It's like 5 players every year that get to go in. It's one of the most exclusive communities in the world. So it's almost building, you know, basketball culture. What are your actual goals to accomplish? You know, whether that's through college or getting a degree, or, you know, playing in a league like the BBL, where being a professional athlete is an extremely valuable thing to do professionally. But before we kind of dive into just a ton of TikTok questions, one of my favorite parts of your TikTok is that you actually do talk about the kind of different periods of British basketball. And we hear a lot about the 90s and the early 2000s as the heyday. What do you think are kind of the different eras that you found in your studies of British basketball? And then my follow-up question to prep is like, what era do you think we're in now?
So I think the 80s is where you have to start, because the 80s, you have a lot of big players coming over. And in the 80s, a lot of the American players were players playing out of American Air Force bases. So for instance, there's one in Mildenhall up near me in Cambridge. They're all over the country. So the 80s, you kind of have lots of great players, and there's a great Facebook group called British Basketball History or something like that. And there's everyone almost talks about how great the 80s and 90s were. And there's a great book about Brunel basketball, obviously the University in London, about how great they were in the 80s. So you kind of have the 80s as their own isolated thing, where it's kind of like how you'd identify grassroots basketball. A lot of the anecdotes from the book are, well, we had 7 players turn up, the bus was late, 2 of the players were hungover, we turned up, there was no kit.
The owner plays and is the coach.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, Bob Hope talks a lot about that, the old commercial director of the BBL.
Yeah. And you go, well, the refs completely did something, or like they'll be exploiting rules. Like, well, the refs made an awful decision, but if you can't find the commissioner, then you can't contest it. So they like took the commissioner away and stuff like that. And then you have the 90s, and then you kind of have like Nigel Lloyd coming through, who's now commentating with Darren Paul down in London, and used to coach London, of course. And you have the 90s where they started putting it on Sky too, and the production of it was really good. A lot of them are on YouTube now. That's really fun watching some of the finals there. And the 90s kind of serve as their own sort of kind of 2010s the NBA, in the sense that it's everything is British basketball. It's amazing. It's high octane, all this, and it's, you know, and the game had changed. It got more athletic. You know, you're seeing great players come through. Then the 2000s, you see, kind of like in the NBA, you see a dearth in talent.
It's interesting that happened in both leagues.
Yeah, it is, and there's 101 reasons for that. And you know, I'm not knowledgeable enough to explain them all. It could be something to do with financing. It could just be to do with the way that the league was financed. But of course, you have teams moving around. If you go onto London Lions Wikipedia page or London Towers, you see that they've had 10 different names, 10 different locations.
They lost the
it's
TV
really
deal.
down to
Yeah.
It's really down to Vince McCauley that the team's still thriving as they are today. You know, he bought them, moved them to Milton Keynes, coached them. Where are we now? I think this is a really good position for British basketball. Now getting the TV deal back, you have some good players, of course. You have Ovi Soko going on Love Island, which did a lot for the, you know, as much as you want to joke and laugh about it, it did a lot for the game.
No, there's a big
no
Love
joking
Island
here.
podcast.
We are not making jokes at Ovi's expense here.
Yeah, exactly. And now he's playing for Le Mans, I believe. And so I think the league's in a good place. You have Justin Robinson, who is the quote unquote face of the league, local. And, you know, this is something I was going to mention a bit later, but there's something of the Steph Curry about Justin Robinson, in the sense that, you know, if you grew up as Gen Z watching the NBA in the 2010s, you're in such an amazing position, because you're watching one of the arguably 2 or 3 greatest players ever in LeBron, 6'9", can dunk from anywhere on the court. And you're watching Steph Curry, about my height, and shoots threes in an exceptional clip. Now, what's so significant about that? Not everyone can dunk. I'm grateful enough, I can barely dunk. But everyone can hit a three. Give me 1,000 tries, everyone in the world will hit a three. And that makes the game so relatable and so accessible. You know, not everyone could go, oh, well, I want to be like LeBron. I'm just going to take off from 4 steps away from the basket and, you know, put my arm in the rim. I'm not Vince Carter. But Justin Robinson is very much of the mold of Steph Curry. short playmakers. I've met Justin Robinson. He's a lovely fella, but he's shorter than me, and I'm 6'2" on a good day. And he shoots threes. He shoots threes, and that's very relatable. From Brixton. He speaks about his relationship with Jimmy Rogers a lot, and Jimmy Rogers is so significant. If you've read anything about the history of the game, you know the name Jimmy Rogers and how important he is. And he's so relatable. And of course, where people now say Curry, I imagine people said Kobe when you two were in school. Of course, working in a school, I saw a lot of it. Everyone's emulating Steph Curry now, but no one's emulating LeBron. But not because they hate him, but
they can't.
How do you emulate LeBron? Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot
so
of
I
sense.
think that's kind of like, I think that's the era we're in. We're kind of in the 2014 NBA kind of era where there's a lot of talent in the league now. There's no denying that. A lot of good imports, and we do have some really good role models and player models to look to.
Yeah. How has it been building a community of hoopers on TikTok? Did you find that this was something that people were thirsting for when you first started?
Well, it's the first time I've used the word, I've heard the word community used. But of course, it's fascinating because I don't think there was much of an appetite for it until you realize in yourself. It's, as we were saying, a lot of questions were asked, and that's what I've kind of fed from. But of course, to be included in the community, I think the British basketball community is such a good one, because of course, without people like yourselves, without Will at BBL Fix, Rebound on Twitter, Darren Paul, Marcel at BBL Lab, the community won't be where, and there's others, I am forgetting them, but the community won't be where it is now. And we all serve very individual purposes. Of course, you kind of have the mass media outlet. BBL Fix it is your house of highlights of British basketball.
Your highlights, the coverage.
Rebound is your numbers guy. Darren Paul, what he doesn't know about basketball isn't worth knowing. He's a lovely guy too, operating out of Cambridge.
Yeah, Darren's great.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. Marcel at BBL Lab, he's doing similar things to BBL Fix and Rebound, and
he's our arch nemesis though. His slander on Twitter against the Lions and the Giants are going to win. You love to see it.
He goes on about the Giants so much.
I know.
But of course, that's the kind of passion that we love.
Yep.
That's the kind of passion that we love. And so, building a community, of course, it's kind of like adding an extra arm to the body of the British basketball community. Everyone within British basketball, whether they know it or not, is part of this community. You will play into it. You'll literally play it, consume it, ask questions about it, watch it. So to bring it across to TikTok, and of course, the videos are shared onto Twitter and Instagram and making it accessible. Cam Hildreth shared one where I made a joke about him. It's been easy in the sense that, again, kind of somewhat selfishly, I have no competition, not really. Like the next biggest British basketball page is the Bristol Flyers with 2,000 followers or something like that.
Duke of Hoops.
Yeah, of course, you're up there.
The Duchess of Hoops making a comeback.
Yeah,
BBL Labs.
You're not in it
yet.
The competition's right here, Jamie. We're scouting you out. That's what this podcast is about.
100%. You're trying to get the inside track.
Exactly.
But for me, it's been easy because I've been able to talk about what I love and talk freely. And people have been fortunate enough to enjoy listening to my monotone voice and enjoy the content that I'm putting out. So for me, it's been easy. I mean, it's still amazing when I'm at a court and a 14-year-old will come up to me and go, You're the guy of TikTok, aren't you? Yeah, I am.
You actually get called out on courts?
Yeah, it's happened 6-7 times now. Yeah. Of course, it puts a lot of pressure on. It's like when Kevin Durant went to Rucker Park, of course, or something like that.
Exactly like that.
Yeah, exactly. Similar levels of production from he and I too. But it's been amazing to be able to associate myself with British basketball England, the BBL, and all of these institutions. Because at the end of the day, I'm just a fan sat in front of a camera talking about something I'm passionate about, and people want to see that.
Yeah. And we hear a lot, that actually The Last Dance coming out early in the pandemic kind of brought back that nostalgia for basketball in the UK and kind of added more, and especially with 2K coming out and a lot of the energy around esports has made Gen Z much more interested in basketball in the UK. And TikTok is not just for Gen Z. There's all different age groups. There's like, it's typically perceived as just for kids, but it's all over the place now. But
Sure.
how do you think, have you seen a shift in how the younger generations have perceived basketball in the UK?
I think it's a difficult one to answer because, as we were saying, it's a great period to be getting into basketball for Britain and the NBA. And I know a lot of people that play 2K, but aren't particularly into basketball. And we spoke about, how accessible the game is for people, how hard it is to play, but how fun it is to emulate.
Yep.
I think The Last Dance, of course, it makes you realize the depth of the game. Like what we were saying with sports history, it isn't a case of Michael Jordan stepped on a court, walked off it an hour and a half later with 30 points in a championship. There was, the culture of the team. There was trying to stop Rodman from Rodmaning. There was, trying to keep Scottie Pippen happy. There was, arguing with Jerry Krause. There's all of this. So I think
Rodman, BBL
Gen
player.
Z, Brighton.
Yep. For a couple games, right?
Do you know who his coach was when he was playing for Brighton? It was Nick Nurse.
What? Nick Nurse coached Dennis Rodman in the BBL?
I'm 95% sure. Like,
okay, we need to check
you
that.
can tell me I'm wrong. Yeah,
it needs to be a documentary.
But Nick Nurse owns Brighton, played for Birmingham, coached Leicester. There's pictures of him up in Leicester's corridors. He coached, he coached in England a long time.
I heard that Rodman showed up hungover, got like 27 rebounds, and then that was like, and then he played one more
5
game and it was done.
He was like, I'm out.
I have a Brighton jersey from that season. It's he must have got paid a lot of money. But of course, before The Last Dance, Paddy Power, the betting company, did a documentary of Dennis Rodman where he went to North Korea. That was interesting, to say the least, as you can imagine. But yeah, so it's a tricky one, looking at how Gen Z perceives basketball, especially in the UK, because I think a lot of that was covered when we were saying they see it as a game that you play in PE. You see it as, oh, it's raining, we can't really play football. Guess we'll play basketball. And quite truthfully and sadly, it would always be an American sport and always be in the shadow of football, And it's sadly for me because I enjoy it, of course, but football's such an amazing sport and I love the game. But it would always be in that shadow and always be second to it. And I think that's the way it's perceived as a backup.
Yeah, I think that's okay. If you're second to the Premier League, I think that's okay. That's a good spot to be
take
in.
that.
I don't think anyone's thinking, let's take over football. Let's take over the Premier League.
Yeah.
You mentioned
but of course, in your head, it has to, doesn't it, for it to grow? You have to put it first.
Yeah,
and that's your big challenge.
Well, even in the States, like the NFL is a lot bigger than the NBA.
Yeah.
Well, they got Christmas Day ratings.
Yeah,
NBA ratings are down.
I mean, ratings are down all over the board, but it's still number 2 to the NFL. NFL is the cult following, just like it is in the Premier League. But basketball is more of that younger audience, which it seems like basketball could be in the UK as well. Maybe it's just that younger up and coming audience.
Well, that's entirely it. That's the thing. It's young intervention. If you want to build a culture of basketball in the UK, you have to start playing before you're 11. You look at every football player, they say, oh, I've been playing since I was 4. As soon as I could walk, I was kicking the ball. Dad put a ball at my feet. Same with basketball. How can we have talented basketball players that are going up against, I don't know, take JJ Redick, who, I love the old man and the free. What a podcast.
Yeah.
He has shot millions of shots in his lifetime.
Yep.
And hundreds of thousands of those would have been on his driveway at home before the age of 10.
Yep.
How can we compete with that? And so that's the key there. That's how we need to change the culture, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned that British basketball TikTok is not super populated right now. How can British basketball teams and players, how can they take better advantage of TikTok, do you think?
I think it's the same way that you would utilize Instagram. Everyone wants to see highlights. Everyone wants to see highlights. Put your highlights on there. 1 minute interviews. That'd be such a fascinating way to get into it.
Yeah.
Five quick hitter questions. All the Smoke, for instance. Stephen Jackson and Matt Barnes. They do their quick hitters, which is like a 5 dinner guests dead or alive, and stuff like that. Just stuff that is easily accessible, easy to consume. yeah, I think that sort of stuff, because what can you do as a team other than put your highlights out there, little adverts? I mean, the more content you have out there, the more views you're going to get, the more clicks you're going to get. Even if you think, okay, I've put 10 minutes into this video and it's not a good one, people are going to see it, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's the way forward for me.
Yeah, the Flyers were pretty early on. They had one of the bigger ones when I first started.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot more BBL teams join now. Like the Lions just started theirs, and they have some pretty good quality content. So it's good to see BBL teams starting to use it more. I'm excited to see that growth, because I think it's a powerful way to reach that audience.
I will take secondhand, blame credit for the Lions, because they put one of my TikToks on their story about Justin Robinson. Then they got a TikTok
the Steph Curry
account,
comparison.
and I'm not saying it's my. Yeah, that was the one. Yeah.
I
want to do more of those, but of course it's a tricky one without it's a tricky one.
Offending people.
Without saying, Kieran Achara's really got a bit of the Dirk Nowitzki about him, and stuff like that. But yeah.
Switching gears a little bit. What do you think are the best jerseys in the BBL right now?
Right now?
I took a lot of heat the other day. We went on the BBL podcast, and I got asked this question, and I just was being a Scorcher supporter, and I just said, I'm going to say it's my team. I'm going to say it's the Scorchers.
Yeah.
And I took a lot of heat for that. So what do you think are the best jerseys in the BBL right now?
I've always been a fan of Worcester. Worcester's last season. Now there's a guy from Chelmsford called Daniel Johnson Thompson playing for Worcester, and
we love him.
He's a lovely guy.
Love him.
Yeah, he's a really lovely guy. I was in the gym with him once, and I've never felt more insignificant doing box jumps next to 6'6" Daniel Johnson Thompson.
Seriously.
Yeah, and I loved Worcester's from last year. Leicester,
Leicester's is so good. Like just the way that it sits on the body, the color scheme, it just like pops on the court. It's so nice.
What do you think of London's? Because I kind of enjoy it. It's very plain, but I do enjoy it.
Skylar, you're the fit queen.
Plain. Yeah, I think they're plain, but I think they're crispy. I like them a lot.
Yeah,
I think they just look clean and nice.
Yep.
Yeah, I think Newcastle are doing the right thing too by kind of mirroring Newcastle United Football Club and the black and white stripes there. Because back in the 80s, Manchester United used to have a basketball team.
Yeah, it was part of that club, right?
Yeah. Franchised as part of Man United. But yeah, Newcastle. But if I had to pick one that I loved and one that I hated, well, I don't, but dislike, I would go. I love Worcester. I'm not a fan of Plymouth.
Okay.
I think because they're going under a bit of a rebrand, if I'm aware.
Not a Foxy fan.
I'm not. It's the green. I just don't think it suits. I think if you're going to go for a color that like the green, where it's very distinctive, very bold, you have to do a lot less with it. You have to have, thick white piping or something, and just something that this is here. It's distinct. We don't have a lot going on. With Leicester, you can say, okay, well, the dark red to light red gradient, that's the thing to look at. Whereas with the green, you have to go, look, it's a garish green. This is what you're looking at. This is the focus point.
Paul Nicholson, I am so sorry. It just seems like every podcast he was one of our guests, friend of the pod. He is, he's works for the Plymouth Raiders, coaching at the academy and commenter. And it seems like, Skylar, every podcast, we don't mean to, but we insult the Raiders somehow, or somehow we the last episode too.
It's completely unintentional.
Paul, we love you. We're sorry. We support the Raiders, but
look, here's what I'll say. Yeah, here's what I say about Plymouth is you have to give them a lot of credit, because for someone like Plymouth to attract players, if you're an American, do you want to play in London or do you want to play in Plymouth? London. And of course, that's where I think, exactly. And I think that's where the university system really works. Having these, Plymouth Martin University, working with the team, I think that really, really does work well. I think that system's great. And of course, you have to credit Plymouth. That they've had some exceptional players there over the time. Josh Wilshere, Rashad Hassan.
Ashley Hamilton, Andrew Lawrence is coming back from injury, hopefully soon. But they have some exciting players
there now.
Yep.
Yeah,
Douche
I love LVC. He's a great player. Yeah.
We love
the
Raiders.
Essex last year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, when London City went under, Ashley Hamilton and LVC signed for Essex. They're not a team anymore. They went in with Oakland Wolves. But their coach, Tom Baker, coached me to be a coach. He did my coaching course. So And that's the thing about British basketball, is everyone knows everyone.
Everyone
Yeah, exactly.
knows everyone. Small
All right.
community.
That's our nice things about the Plymouth Raiders segment for Paul Nicholson. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Sorry we roast you on every pod. We did not plant Jamie with that response, by the way, Paul.
No. No. I did look, at the end of the day, I know art students, if I only take a small commission, like 15, 30%, just figure it out.
Yep, definitely. Okay, let's end the pod with a very difficult question and a very broad question. But if you were in charge of British basketball, you're the chancellor, the king, you are the one that is in total control, or what does Bill Simmons say? The czar of sport. You're the czar of British basketball. What would be some of your top strategies to help grow the game in the UK?
So culture is key. I've alluded to it before in the pod. Culture is key. We need to change the culture. And of course, in Britain, that's such an uphill task. And of course, I'm going to sound like I'm talking negatively about the sports we have in Britain, but I'm not. In Britain, if we look at the sports that are biggest, I would say football, rugby, and cricket. Now, if you look at those three sports, they're all played on grass, and you don't really need a lot to play them. We said it with football. With rugby, you need, a line you're playing to, and you don't need to use a ovular ball. You could get away with it. Okay, cricket seems like the outlier. Well, in primary school, I was playing on a field with a bin, a tennis ball, and a bat. It weren't a lot. And basketball, as we said, it requires this kind of specific apparatus. I think for it to grow, you need success, because in Britain we're very patriotic with our sport. And before the 2012 Olympics, no one knew who Greg Rutherford was, let alone what he competed in. And of course, I imagine some people still don't know. But after 2012, a lot of people knew Greg Rutherford, the tall ginger long jumper. Now, of course, why? He won gold. He did something for the country. I think if we was to have Olympic success, that's on the biggest sporting scene in the world. And it's shown what basketball can do for the country and not what the country can do for basketball. And of course, that's where that return investment comes. Matt Harbour, who's the head coach of my program, he said in a coaching seminar, basketball is a return investment. We coach to hope that people that we coach will then put that same effort in and coach people there. And I think that return investment is needed on the elite scale. I think to be seen, Luol Deng has done it perfectly with Deng Camp, with, the ambassador work that he does. If we was to have, say Cam Hildreth becomes an all-star, hypothetically, I think that would go a long way to changing the culture, because we have someone representing Britain that, Cam Hildreth is 6'4", 6'3". He's not particularly tall. Again, a very accessible sort of frame look. He looks quite similar to myself. We're not special. We're not a 7'1" phenom. We're not Kevin Durant, who's 7 foot, plays like a guard, can shoot from anywhere on the floor. So I think to try and keep it succinct, how do we kind of like grow basketball? Well, we need to change the culture. How do we change the culture? We need to show the people and show the government and show the governing bodies that basketball can do a lot for people. Now, of course, I imagine you don't need me to tell you that if you was to go to anywhere in Tower Hamlets or Brixton, for Jimmy Rogers' example, basketball is vital to children. It's vital to the way that we eat, the way that we sleep, the way that we live our lives. And if we was to able to grow that and show that there is so much to be gained from this sport with regards to youth centres and keeping people off streets and keeping people healthy, because of course Britain is regarded as an obese nation. Now, I think that would be a great way to grow the nation, is to really show that this culture is a special one for basketball. And we can do a lot for it, and it can do a lot for us.
That's an incredible answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's such a broad question that's so hard to answer, and very well said.
Of course, yeah. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you? Where should they follow you? Anything to plug?
Yeah, my TikTok is just my name, Jamie Furness. My Instagram is JME_Furness, like the rapper JME. But yeah, if you want to do something for me and you want to play, go on to Basketball England Club Finder, because I get this a lot. Where can I play? The Club Finder. That's where it is. If what will I plug? Go buy a basketball, go play basketball. That's what I implore you to do. Go make friends with it. Go start what, you know, so many people before us that have or go finish or continue whatever people have started.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jamie. Appreciate it.
Plug. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. It's my pleasure.